Okay, today I'm going to show you how to do the Kitchener stitch to close up the opening for our toe on our slipper. So what we're going to do is you got to make sure that both of your needles are facing the same way. It doesn't matter if it's facing to the left or to the right, they just have to be facing the same way. And then you want to make sure you have an even number of stitches on both needles. So I have 10 on my front needle and 10 on my back. I have cut my yarn and I've gone ahead and I've threaded a tapestry needle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this so that the bottom of my work is facing me, and we're going to have an invisible seam, so it doesn't matter which side of the work you have facing you, just that the needle tips are pointed the same way. So we have to do a setup, and the way that we're going to do a setup is we're going to insert the tapestry needle into the front needle, the first stitch, as if we're purling. Okay, and then we're going to bring the yarn all the way through, and we make sure it doesn't get tangled on any other needles. Okay, so that's the first setup. Then we're going to go to the back needle and we're going to insert into the first stitch as if we're knitting, and then we're going to bring the yarn through as well. Okay, so that was our setup. So now for the first stitch, we're going to go into the first needle as if we are going to knit. So we go in as if we're knitting, and we're going to take the stitch off the needle so it goes onto our string. And then what I like to do is go right into the second stitch as if we're going to purl, and then pull the yarn through. So you're kind of pulling it through both stitches at one time. You don't want to yank the yarn really tight, but you do want to make sure that it does get tight, just not too tight. So now we're going to the back. Now we ended with a purl here, so we're going to start with a purl on the back one. So we go as if we're purling, and it comes off, and then we're going to go as if we're knitting, and we're going to leave it on, and then we're going to pull all the way through. Okay, and again, you want to make sure that the yarn kind of stays between the needles. You don't want it to accidentally wrap around one of the needles. So since we ended with a knit, we're going to front needle, go knit, and we're going to take it off. And then the next stitch, purl, and we're going to leave it on, and we're going to bring the yarn through. So now we're going to the back stitch. We're going to purl off, and then go in as knit, and we're going to leave it on. Whoop. Okay, so if you accidentally pull one off like I just did, we're just going to put that last stitch back on the needle. Okay, and we're just going to make sure our yarn isn't tangled, and then we're going to pull it through. Okay, so now we're going to go front needle, knitting and off. Then we're going to purl and leave on and bring it through. Back needle, purl off, and then knit to leave it on and pull through. Okay, and you can see how it's starting to close up. So again, we're going to go front, knit and off, purl and keep it on, bring the yarn through, back needle, purl and off, and then back needle, knit and leave it on, front needle, knit off, purl and leave it on, back needle, purl off, then knit and leave it on. And see how this got caught? We're just going to take it off the needle. Okay, now I find that the tapestry needles that have a slight bend to them work a little bit better for the Kitchener stitch, but you can use a regular tapestry needle. Just don't use one of the very sharp ones. So we're back to the front, and if you're not sure where you are, you can look to see where your yarn is attached. So yarn is attached in the back needle. So we're going to go to the front, knit and off, then purl and keep on. Bring the yarn through. Back needle, we're going to purl off and then knit and keep it on. Front needle, knit off, purl on, back needle, purl off, and then knit on. Okay, and you should always have an equal number of stitches after you've completed the front needle and the back needle. There should be an even number, so I have 3 on the front needle, 3 on the back needle. So my front I'm going to knit off, and then I'm going to purl and leave it on, bring the yarn through, back needle, purl off, then knit and leave it on, front needle, knit off, purl and leave it on, back needle, purl and off, and then knit and leave it on. The last 2 stitches get a little tricky because everything's kind of loose now, so just make sure they don't fly off your needles. And then the last one, we're going to knit off the front, and then we're going to purl off the back. Okay, and as we bring our yarn through, we can flip over to the right side, and you see how now our stockinette goes across the toe. Okay, our ribbing goes across the toe, and we really don't have a seam. This was our decrease and our decrease over here, but the toe has no seam. Okay, so all you would do is you would put your needle, insert it to the inside, turn your your slipper inside out, and then weave in your ends. So let me just untangle this so you can see what it looks like without a tail. I'm just going to bring the yarn through. Okay, and this is what the toe of your slipper is going to look like. Okay, and if you look, you put your hand in, you really can't see any of the seam. It's different because we have a different fabric on the bottom versus the top, but these ribbings kind of curl around, and that is how you do the Kitchener stitch.